Hi everyone, it's Rax. Diablo 4 Season 3 starts tomorrow, so of course we've got to go in here and make a fresh class tier list. I gotta be honest, I've been looking at this for hours, and I think most of the classes are really close together. But let's jump in here and see where everything landed to help maybe make a decision for you on what you want to play tomorrow. Let's get started. Let's quickly go over the methodology on how we make the tier list. First of all, we're going to rank every class 1st to 5th, 1st being the best rank, 5th being the worst in the following categories. Leveling is their ability and quality of life in going from level 1 all the way up to world tier 4. Speed is their ability to do the overworld events and the low and mid tier nightmare dungeons. Endgame is their ability to push the nightmare dungeons, crush Uber Duriel, and then, of course, finally go into the gauntlet. Survivability is pretty self-explanatory. How well can they survive? As a casual, how far can you go with this class when you don't have that much time to play, or maybe you don't have that much skill? And we'll combine all of that into an overall ranking. Remember the golden rule, though? Don't let this list or any other resource tell you how to have fun in the game. Play whatever you like. One quick note before we jump into the list, and we especially saw this last season, there can be unintended changes, bugs, crazy mechanics that shift everything and flip everything upside down. So we'll have to see how things actually play out with the new Seneschal pets and the patch notes and the overpowered nerfs. This is just my best estimate, but I haven't actually jumped in and tested anything, so take that with a grain of salt. All right, coming in 5th place, and this may surprise a lot of you, I think is the Druid. So, what exactly happened? Well, Druids are getting buffed with Lightning Storm, which is already a very good build, and now it's probably going to get pushed into S tier. So, in the end game, Lightning Storm is going to absolutely fry, but that's not exactly where the Druids struggled with to begin with. Where Druids struggle is in leveling. The only class that levels nearly as slow as a druid is a barbarian, but barbarians have gotten a little bit of something lately, which has helped them. Yes, Lightning Storm might be one of the better options, and maybe you can combine it with something like Poison Creeper. But still, it's going to be shocking if they aren't the slowest for leveling. They're also just kind of a slow class. Yes, you can run around as Yogi the Bear and pulverize everything, and Werewolf Tornado has some speed, but in general, their only movement ability, is trample, and it's really inferior to some of the other movements, especially with Barbarians gaining additional speed with buffing a build like Charge. Druid's speed is nothing to get excited about, and they're lucky that Necros exist, otherwise they might be last. In the end game, druids always do very well. Their builds synergize incredibly, maybe better than any other classes. They always dominate. But the problem is there isn't much of an end game currently in Diablo 4. And in Diablo 4, the current end game that's going to be released for this patch is probably going to have a very heavy emphasis on your speed, which again is something that they struggle with. So it's not quite clear how much this raw power is going to help them. Survivability, they're still great at it. There's still Kenmore refrigerators. They always will be. But for a casual, it's not really a big recommendation here. They're probably the worst class you can play because they take a lot of time to come online. If I put all that together, I'm assuming Druids are probably overall going to be the worst next season. In Season 3, their Lightning Storm got buffed. Pulverize will still dominate. Werewolf Tornado is always there. Storm Claw's good. Shred might also be there. For a request next season, we just need a better leveling experience, and we need a better way to move around other than just trample. Coming in 4th, I have the Rogue. Now, Blizzard in this patch is actually making some significant changes to the Rogue. First of all, their most powerful build, Twisting Blades, is going to take a very big hit along with a lot of the poison interactions that it uses. So that's just straight up nerfing its best build. Their ranged builds are pretty good already, and they are getting further buffed. This has been a common theme from Blizzard. They've been buffing ranged over and over and over because ranged wasn't quite up to par with melee, so it all makes sense. The problem with this like seesaw, this flipping of power, is I actually think ranged rogues are much harder to play than melee rogues. So Rogue is supposed to be the button combo high skill class. So I guess class fantasy wise, there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of the people that found Rogue very accessible before, even though with a ranged build now, you might be able to get somewhat of a similar power out of it if you play perfectly. I don't think everyone's going to be able to do that. So I think the Rogue stock is falling a bit. For leveling, they'll still be really good. Twisting Blades was their best option. It got nerfed. It will still be really good, and the ranged options will be just fine for ripping through the leveling process as well. For speeds, they're still the best. You're not going to be faster than a rogue. A rogue's always going to move better than you, which is going to help them probably in the end game. They're falling a little bit because Twisting Blades is going down and some of the other builds are going up, and I don't think ranged is as easy to play, but I wouldn't be surprised if rogues put up some major times in the gauntlet. Survivability, they're the worst, but that's the idea of the class fantasy. I'm not really sure that they're ever going to get better than that, but I do think they made some changes. If I remember correctly, they did implement some legendary powers or some changes that improved it a little bit, so that's nice. For casuals, again, it's getting a little bit harder to play the rogue via these patch notes, and the builds that you're going to have to play, in my opinion, are harder to play. I played them. I played them all to level 100. It's not as easy as merry-go-round Twisting Blades, just one-shotting everything for you. So it's getting a little bit more difficult there. Overall, they're in fourth, but rogues are going to fry. I mean, if you're a very high-skill rogue player, you're not going to have any problems. Their best builds are Pen Shot, Twisting Blade, some of the different trap builds, and Flurry. Season 4, we're gonna have to see the damage here, but I'm not really sure how many people are going to be playing Melee Rogue. Melee Rogue might need some love next season. Coming in third, I have the Necromancer. Now, the Necromancers are going to feel very similar to how they felt last season, with still Bloodlance doing pretty well, and Bone Spear. I mean, Bone Spear is hilarious, man. Bone Spear has just carried the Necromancer class and continues to do so. I don't know where this class would be without that build. But the thing that's getting buffed is Bone Spirit. And it's just very interesting. You can read all the different powers. It sounds like it could be absolutely amazing, or it could be a little bit of a dud, but Bone Spirit was already okay before. So it could range anywhere from S tier to B tier. We'll just have to see how it turns out, but that's probably what the Necromancers are going to be trying next season. And by the way, Infinimist went down. So Infinimist going down just means, again, Bone Spear's got to be carrying the torch forward. Blizzard has tried to kill it before, but it was still really powerful. It still continues to be one of the best builds in the game. God, Necromancers, you better be sending a fruit basket Bone Spear's way, because it's been carrying. For leveling, Necromancers are the best. It's really not close. If you put on Blood Surge just pentakills the entire screen, pretty much the entire way to 100. People were saying that it falls off or it doesn't have that good at boss damage. It doesn't really fall off. Yeah, it's not the greatest boss killer in the world, but I mean, it one-shots everything else. So gonna be tough to beat a Necromancer leveling up. For speeds, I mean, it's just a meme. They're by far the worst. They don't even have the only movement ability. Blood Mist, I believe, makes them slower. So Necromancers have no speed whatsoever. Need some massive help here, and the devs have kind of chatted about it in the campfire chats about how it's kind of the fantasy to make them slow, but maybe they're too slow. Yeah, they're too slow. In Endgame, I have them slipping just a bit again because Infinimus is going down. It looks like Bone Spear is going to have to carry everything again. We'll see how Bone Spirit turns out. If Bone Spirit turns out to just be absolutely godly, maybe the 4 is not a fair ranking. Survivability, they're kind of mid. They have pets. The pets are really widely taken because pets kind of suck, but if you do pull them out, that makes them extremely tanky, and usually they can fight at range, and Blood Mist is a great, just complete invulnerability. So people use that on things like Uber Lilith and Uber Duriel to dodge all their most vicious attacks. It's a pretty good way to survive. For casuals, Necros are going to feel amazing. Again, if you slap Blood Surge on or Bone Spear early on, you're going to be frying everything. Early on, the pets, with a little bit of the buffs recently, will do just fine. They're not great in the end game, but for leveling up, you'll probably feel like $1,000,000. Put that all together, I give it a solid 3. They're kind of middle of the road here. Best builds, Bone Spear, Bone Spirit, Bloodlance. Infinimus is there, but it got nerfed. Maybe Macro and the other Necro boys over in Maxroll will figure out a way to keep it up there. Season 4, we need an actual summoner build, and we need movement. Simple as that. Coming in second, I have the Sorcerer. And you might be wondering, how did Sorcerer get it second? They just lost their pretty much only blockbuster build, Ball Lightning, which is going to take a pretty massive hit, but we'll have to see how good it still is. Is it still S tier? I'm guessing probably not. Is it A tier? Maybe. How in the world is Sorcerer going to get second place? Well, the thing is Sorcerer is really good at a lot of things, like leveling and speed, and where they lack a blockbuster build in the end game, unless somehow the meteor changes make Meteor Sorcerer just amazing. I don't think it's going to matter too much. I think sorcerers are obviously still going to fry Uber, Lilith, and Duriel, but in the gauntlet, you only need to be strong enough to clear the bosses and kind of rip through the content as fast as possible to get the highest score. I think sorcerers with the Seneschal Pet are going to have just enough power and the right combination of speed where they might post some of the highest scores anyway. I'm not really sure that it matters. That's why I have them ranked so high. For leveling, sorcerers are incredible. They can compete with Necros, which is pretty much impossible for every other class to try to hold on to. A Blood Surge Necro just one-shots the entire screen, but sorcerers can do pretty well with the Fireball enchant with either Firewall or Chain Lightning. Just destroys everything. For speed, they're real fast. Teleport is incredible. They have a lot of legendary powers that synergize with it. Sorcerers are not lacking in the mobility department. In the end game, we already talked about this. It's hard to see what their god tier build is going to be, but they're going to have plenty of builds that are way up there that I think are going to get the job done. I don't really think it matters too much. Survivability, well, if sorcerers get hit, it hurts pretty bad, but they got them some cooldowns to save them, and they got decent mobility with teleport. If you dodge everything, you'll be fine. Casuals, I think they're the best. I think sorcerer is probably the class where you can slap on just about anything, and I think it will work. It's probably the closest class to getting to that point. There's a lot of different skills and abilities that are at least B tier, so pretty much whatever you want to play is probably going to feel pretty good. You put all that together, and I have them at rank 2. Their best builds are Chain Lightning, Firewall, Meteor, Arc Lash, and maybe Ball Lightning still. We'll see how bad the nerf is. Season 4 request, one of the only builds that I think is really far behind, which is a Diablo 2 icon, is Frozen Orb. I have no idea why it's so bad still. And finally, coming in at number 1, I have the Barbarian. Now, when I made this tier list at the start of the previous season, I actually had Barbarians in last. So how did they go from last to first in my mid-season adjusted tier list last season to still in first right now, even after the patch notes seem to have nerfed a lot of what they were doing? Well, let's look at last season. The overpower mechanic was way too strong, and the overpower mechanics for Barbarians on top of it were insane. And then Hoda had some bugs with it, and then you just combine all of this, and Hoda Barbarians were the absolute juggernaut build along with Ball Lightning. So now we go to this season, and what happened? Well, Ball Lightning seems to have been hit really, really hard. Hit harder than Hoda. So Hoda had some corrections, and the overpower changes happened within the Barbarian tree itself a little bit, which is bringing overpower down, and then overpower itself was lowered, and I think it was cut exactly in half. So then when I put all that in my brain and I think about what is going to be the next output of Hoda this season after all that, I still think it's going to be incredible. It was literally that strong. And with the pets assisting it, I wouldn't be surprised if Hoda still kind of rules the world here. Then on top of it, Upheaval was already on the rise, and we got some things for Upheaval and Rend as well. Not to mention, probably the biggest winner of the patch is Charge Barb. I think it was Adam Jackson that went into the developer live stream, and he said, you don't know what? We just like 9x Charge Barb's damage. And if it's too powerful, oh well, it's too powerful for a season. It's looking pretty good. And not only is Charge going to be an incredible like powerhouse skill, it's also a movement ability. Your movement ability is what's going to be killing everything. So, and then the final thing about that we learned last season is when we went into the abattoir, all the different classes, all the different builds went in there and tried to survive. And there was the melted heart shenanigans, and that got nerfed, da 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 da. But when we actually look at which classes could go in there and actually tank those deadly blood seekers or all the elites attacking you, the one that seemed to do the best was the Barbarian. So, I mean, everything is working here. and it's hard to see how Barbarians aren't just going to dominate. So the little bit of bad news is Barbarian leveling is still one of the worst in the game. Thank God Druids exist in the game because there's no great way to level up a Barbarian currently. We could really use some help in the early game. For speeds, they're going up a little bit because charge is going to be one of the main skills and it's a movement ability. So that only helps you. And another thing that Blizzard is doing is trying to make some changes to where we don't have to use all the shouts. That opens up Barbarian build diversity as well. That can only be beneficial for Barbarians that they can get the same output while taking less shouts. In the end game, I think their output's going to be the highest. Between Charge, Hoda, and Upheaval, I think one of those, if not all of those, are just going to be godly. I think it's going to be real good for the Gauntlet. They should put up some crazy scores there. Survivability, we talked about it. They're as tanky as can be. For casuals, it takes a while to build up a Barbarian. Maybe 4 is still a little bit of a low ranking. We moved them up from 5. Barbarians take a while to get powerful. You got to get through the leveling process. You got to find all the different legendary powers. Once you do, though, it should feel real nice. Overall, I have them in first. Charge should be godly. Hoda, Upheaval, Rend, all of those should be good. For Season 4, we still need a better leveling experience, and maybe we can have a return of Whirlwind. Here is the full ranking summary if you'd like to pause the video and reflect over all the changes. This is from the mid-season ranking of Season 2 last time. And then one final slide just for fun. Let's look at the historical rankings. We can see that no matter how many times Blizzard tries to nerf Barb, it looks like they've actually came out pretty much the highest by far all time. Well, that's it, everyone. That is my Season 3 class tier list. What classes are you guys going to play next season? What are you going to start as tomorrow? And what do you think is going to be the strongest build? Do you think I got everything right here, or am I grotesquely underestimating or overestimating something? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you online for the brand new season. Hope you guys have a blast. Thank you.